Hello, welcome everyone to our next webinar from the Laser AI series. This time we will mainly focus on the secrets of automation of data extraction, and we will show you practical example of how it is done in our team. So today's agenda, first of all, we will give you a little update on the security of Laser AI, and we will explain what FedRAMP authorization is and how we got it. Then you will meet part of our Laser AI team, sharing the secrets of data extraction mechanism based on the example of Dextr. They will also show a little demo of our tool. So our first speaker is Pawel Kunstman. He's a co-founder and the president of Evidence Prime, and he focuses on enterprise security and AI features of Evidence Prime. He manages the company operations, and today he will give us an update on security and FedRAMP authorization. Next, we will meet the Laser AI team, and our first speaker is Iga Czyż. She is a product designer, and she strives to make the world of systematic reviews a little more user-friendly. Her background is in pharmacy and design. The second speaker from Laser AI team is Ewelina Sadowska. She's a pharmacist and evidence synthesis specialist. At Evidence Prime, she's responsible for testing new solutions in Laser AI and conducting evidence synthesis research. And finally, Ewa Borowiack. She's evidence synthesis specialist with 15 years of experience in conducting HTA reports, systematic reviews, and targeted literature reviews. At Evidence Prime, she provides methodological knowledge to the designers and the software development team. So with this introduction, I would like to give the floor to Pawel and start the first presentation. Hello.
Hello, Claudia. Hello, everyone. I hope we can hear and see me well. All right. So my today's presentation is a bit of a follow-up of what I presented already in April, but we have some interesting news. And because of that, I decided to tell you a little bit more about the FedRAMP program and FedRAMP authorization that we got. So, okay, let's go to slides. All right, so what FedRAMP is and how we got it. So I will first make a little recap of the cloud systems security in general, just a couple of slides. Some of you might have already seen them, but it will be much quicker than it was in April. But let's go through the cloud system security in general. So first of all, the very basics, but maybe it would be a good refresher for everyone. So what is a CIA triad? It's not this CIA that probably most of you think about, but it's about the conditions of when this information can be treated as secure. And there are three conditions. One is the C, confidential. The second one is I, the integral. And the third one is the A, which stands for available. Confidential really means that if someone can read it, then it's not confidential, right? The integrity is really saying that, okay, we can have information confidential, but if it could be altered, someone could go and alter that information, it is not secure. So integrity is the second topic. It may not be tampered with. And the third one is great, even if the information is confidential and integral, but it cannot be accessed because it's not accessible in a safe like here. Also, it's not secure. So these three things have to be met together in order for the information to be secure. And really all the systems, all the frameworks for the security, cloud security are really about achieving these three things. And what can go wrong? Actually, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. I will not go into details of that. I did that in my April's seminars, so you can go and find them on YouTube. But there is really a lot of things, and it's both about the technology and about the people. And I would say that much more is really about the people and how to prevent errors or malicious behavior than really about the technology. Technology is really used by people and can be, of course, abused. But both of these things have to be managed. So really the cloud system security has two legs. The technology leg, which usually people tend to think about that as the first thing. But the second thing is the people and how to prevent behaviors that could make the information insecure, right? So the technology is really stands on the principle of the secure technical design and implementation and secure technical operations, which is more and more important in the cloud environments. And about the people, it is really about service provider procedures. So if we are your provider, if you use Laser, we are the provider. And the question is whether we have the procedures that prevent our people to do things which could violate the CIA triangle. And about the customer procedures. So security also applies to the things that the customers do. And in order to really check whether that things works, because it's not a one-time effort, it is a constant thing. Security is really a journey, not a destination. We have to apply also monitoring, so checking whether the security is met or there are some problems that we have to face. And the auditing, which really applies mostly to the procedures and whether the company or the organization keeps the procedures that they declared to keep. And if we have all of that, we can really talk about compliance. And there are a couple of standards which are in the lower corner on the right. And there is the SOC 2, which is probably the most common. There's the ISO, the European version, let's say, of SOC 2. It's not exactly the same, but quite close. It's the FedRAMP, which really builds upon the SOC 2 and NIST, which goes after, in order to allow the US agencies, US government to purchase the services, in our case, the cloud services. And of course, there is the EU GDPR, which is a bit about more of privacy than the security itself, but very often they are connected. So now, what is FedRAMP? Because I think that many of you didn't hear about that. In order to do that, I will just give the floor really to the people behind FedRAMP. Let them tell us what the FedRAMP is.
The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP, promotes the adoption of secure cloud services across the U.S. government, providing a standardized approach to security assessments for cloud service offerings. FedRAMP creates a partnership between the federal government and industry. Together, we modernize IT infrastructure while protecting federal information. Before FedRAMP, vendors had to meet different security requirements for each federal agency. FedRAMP eliminates this duplication by providing a common security framework, making it possible for agencies and cloud service providers to reuse authorizations. Agencies review a standardized set of security materials against one common baseline. A cloud service offering is authorized once, and then the security package can be used by any federal agency. FedRAMP's guiding principle is reuse. Do once, use many times. This saves money, time, and effort for both agencies and cloud service providers.
Okay, thank you, FedRAMP. So you heard that. This is really the security framework which is aimed at reuse. So what it really means is that we go through this process, which, as you will see in a moment, it's not easy. Once, and the agencies can reuse what we declared, what was checked, what was audited, and just use the product. And this is used for the US government agencies to limit the costs simply, and the time to implement the new technologies. Okay, now the next slide. So how the FedRAMP works. It's one of the paths which is possible within FedRAMP. There are many of them, but we chose the simplest one really, which is called Lase AI, which stands for a low risk software as a service authorization, and so-called agency process. So which means that we go through one agency which cooperates with us, and then at the end, when we get something which is called the ATO, the authority to operate, then it is verified by FedRAMP Project Management Office and is available to all the agencies in the US. So this agency process starts with the preparation of the company and of the system. So it must be assessed whether it's ready and pre-authorized. Then there is authorization, which starts with this full security assessment, which is done by the 3PAO, which is a third-party authorized auditor. And after it is being done, the agency reviews all that was presented to them and authorizes that. And then once it is authorized, it can go public, let's say, so the agency is allowed to operate that system. And the continuous monitoring starts, which really means that the agency checks whether the system is still secure. And at the same time, the PMO, so the Project Management Office of FedRAMP, can begin the verification and providing that openly to all the agencies in the United States. So all in all, there are 263 already authorized systems in FedRAMP. 82 are in process, and we are one of them, which really means that the PMO now verifies us, because we are already have the ATO, but in order to appear on the marketplace as possible to be reused by all the other agencies, it takes time. That's why we are here. And there are also 29 ready, which I don't really know what that status means. There are a couple of 4 actually FedRAMP levels. We applied for the Lase AI, which is the lowest of them. The high FedRAMP is really for the most critical infrastructures. It is required in order to be purchased by the US Army. The lower ones are also for the infrastructures. So the high and medium are for things like Azure or Google Cloud or AWS. And many others, of course, very high security systems. The low and the lowest, the Lase AI, are for the systems as ours, especially the Lase AI is for the systems which do not process the information which is very sensitive. And in our case, our systems mostly operate on public literature, as you know, so it is not really required to go that much higher, because this would also increase tremendously costs. Each of the level puts up the cost about tenfold. So it is really important to stay as low as it is required. In our case, we have 37 externally audited controls. I will tell about the controls in a moment, and about 65 self-attested controls, which means that the controls that we declare that we fulfill them, and of course we had to do that, but we don't have to go through the full audit with them within FedRAMP. What is a control? The control is NIST SP800 definition. NIST SP800 is the underlying security framework which used for FedRAMP to verify whether the system is secure or not. So security control is a safeguard or countermeasure which is used in the information system or an organization, which is very important, which is designed to protect the CIA triad, so the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability of information. And there are, as you saw on the previous slide, it was 421 controls in total. And on the right, you can see just the groups of these controls. It's really a lot of them. And each of the groups is focusing on a very well-defined and important aspect of the security of the system. So like access control, like incident response, like maintenance, like planning, personal security, and so on and so on. So how does the individual control look like? So FedRAMP, fortunately for us and for everyone who applies to get FedRAMP, provides quite a precise definition of each of the controls, which need to be documented and audited. And that's one of the examples from our system security plan. And that is RI5, which is really about vulnerability scanning. And as you can see, it provides a quite precise description of what the organization needs to assure, implement, and validate in order to document really how we did implementation of such a control. And the question is then how, I will not show you our documentation of how we did that. That's at this moment, it is pretty confidential, but we can see how the controls are audited. So FedRAMP also provides a template that the assessors can use or are obliged to use to verify whether the organization like ours really does what we are supposed to do. And here you can see the definition of the objectives, and they are really quite detailed. And so the assessors look at that and verify whether the system that they audit really does what is written. So The FedRAMP template also provides the assessment procedures. So it doesn't only tell what are the goals of the assessment within each of the controls, but also how to check it. So on the lower right, you can see the assessment procedure, which is really about the examination, so checking the documentation mostly, the interview, and during the interview, the cloud service provider team is being interviewed by the auditor or auditors. And the auditors request evidence. So it might be documentation, very often it's live demonstration of the given feature, how it is being done. Sometimes it's required to provide the copies of mails, chats, reports, which provide the evidence that certain control really works in the organization. For example, if something happens, there is an incident, that we acted as we should in order to resolve this incident. So how we did that? I will go very fast through that. Part of that was already in April. So first of all, we implemented security policies. We did that actually 3 years ago, but in the last iteration, which was kind of remade for the FedRAMP certification, was in October 21. And we did, as you can see, 26 living policies, which define how we operate from such points like how we do set up accounts and access control, how we, for example, verify employees, how we verify the vendors, how we apply the security to our workstations, how we do encryption, and so on and so on. And our policies are SOC 2 and FedRAMP compliant and were audited during the FedRAMP certification, at least in part. And they are obligatory during the employee security training and during onboarding of new employees. Secondly, we secured the cloud infrastructure. We operate on Kubernetes microservices, which operate on Azure Commercial Cloud, which helped us very much in our path towards the certification. We tried also the Google Cloud, which would be probably more natural for us, as we are very much Google-centric in our office, but Azure proved to be much better in terms of compliance than the other clouds. And we have the secure architecture and software development, which is guided by our development process, which uses Kanban. So it is agile, of course, and it's governed by our software development lifecycle policy, which pretty well defines what we need to do and therefore what we do. And the next step is the security-related cooperation with the agency. Without that, at least in the agency-driven path, you cannot get the authorization. So the most important thing is working together with the agency, called the sponsor sometimes, to prepare the solution that's useful for them and that their security team can verify and allow the authority to operate as a final step. And one of the most important pieces of that is to define really well the controls that require implementation on the agency side. Because not everything, as I told you in the beginning of my presentation, not everything can be done on the cloud service provider. Some things must be done by the customers, and it's really important to define very well this part. And the step 5 is auditing. So the audits, the pen tests, which are very important part of that thing, and all of these has to be applied continuously in order to provide the continuous monitoring, which is one of the conditions of getting the certification. So how the pen tests work, you know, plan, then there's the discovery, then the hacking and report, and maybe hacking again if something improved over the time. And the FedRAMP audits are done every year in parts, and once every three years, the full audit has to be done. And formal application is the last step, really. So once the system and the organization are positively audited, so the agency must approve remediation plans for any findings, if at all, that were identified during the audits. The security team of the agency must review the security package. And if both of these are positive, the agency issues the authorization to operate. And from that moment starts the FedRAMP PMO part to be listed on the marketplace. We are already listed, but we are not approved yet for use of all the other agencies, but it should be done pretty soon. So the grand finale is really this. So our authorization to operate, we received the ATO from the NIH, and we are now officially active FedRAMP system, and soon we'll have the full marketplace availability, which is required for the other agencies to use it. So the last really slide is the lessons learned. There is one really important lesson learned. So what is the value of this FedRAMP certification for you, for our users? So if you are a representative of the US agency, then yes, you are allowed to use Laser. Well, from the marketplace, you will be able to use it very soon, but you can contact us and then start the process even today. And if you are not a US agency, think about that. In order to pass this FedRAMP certification process, we needed to adapt the whole organization and all our systems to be secure. And we implemented one of the most thorough security standards in the industry, which applies both to the system and the organization. So you are really in a very safe hands. Okay, so that's all from my side. Thank you very much. I see that I consumed more time than I planned, but sorry, Claudia.
No problem. I just wanted to mention that if you have any questions, we invite you to ask them in the Q&A section. And there are already some questions which are being answered by our colleague Artur Nowak about the publications which were conducted in Laser AI. So you can also see these answers and check the publications. And right now I will go straight into the next presentation. And afterwards, we will have some time to answer more questions.
Hi, hello. Today we will take a closer look at our data extraction tool, which we call Dextr. My name is Iga, and I will quickly show you the basic concepts of the tool. And later I will step back and leave a scene to Eva and Ewelina, who will show you how the tool works on very concrete examples. But let's start with a little bit of data. Here we've got answers to the question, multi-select questions. The publication to which the questionnaire was prepared was investigating the problems with adaptation of automated tools in systematic review, of course. So in the first question, as you can see, data extraction tool and automation of the process here is very much anticipated by users, by researchers, and also still data extraction is one of the most time-consuming part. Perhaps I don't have to convince anyone regarding this. So there is still so much room for the development in this area. If you have participated in our previous webinars, you already know that in Laser we can perform title and abstract screening and also full text screening. But what about data extraction? So this is something that we are currently working on. So we are taking all what we learned from the Dextr development, we are adjusting tool, and at the end of the summer, it will be integrated with Laser. Okay, so data extraction tool is organized around three main components. The first one, controlled vocabularies, are coding terms for extraction. Then form templates. In the form templates, we can use controlled vocabularies, but also attached models. And at the end, we can build projects upon this too. We can, but we also don't have to. Of course, forms and vocabularies may be reused across multiple projects. So with each next, it's just easier and faster. In a few minutes, Eva will open a new project. And after the PDF upload, the model will proceed the PDF and then suggest in a certain field things to extract. Eva will verify the model suggestion and then add some at her own. And at the very end, we will send the completed form to Ewelina for quality assurance review. In the organization level, we've got two main roles, admins and extractor. Admin is the person responsible for creation and managing projects, but also he or she can manage templates and vocabularies. Of course, as admin, we can invite others to become a primary extractors or quality assurance reviewers. Alternatively, admin can perform extraction on his own, her own. Researchers working as extractors may also add new terms that are not available in vocabularies. In this case, we are suggesting new terms to the vocabulary, and admin later have to verify it. Okay, so that's all from my side. And now Ewelina will show you how to create form templates and controlled vocabularies.
Here we have a main panel, consists of 3 parts that Iga mentioned before. And the first element is template. Template is a pattern used as a guide for producing similar projects. To make our extraction easier, we can create some templates which can be reused later. So let's create our template. Okay, so here we have a panel in which we can create our templates. On the left, we can add some fields or import them from previously created templates. So let's import some fields from our standard project. Yeah, for example, those unit and those value. And in the middle, there's a panel to describe our object. And each object may have 1 or more attributes, which can be a text field or vocabulary field. And we can also customize our objects by changing colors. So the next option is required field. For example, when the extraction of some object is necessary, we can choose this option. And if we don't enter anything during the extraction form will be blocked. And another helpful option is enable model suggestion. And as the name of the checkbox says, during the extraction, selected model will suggest us some parts of an article which refer to, for example, dosage, like here. And on the right, there is a preview where we can see extraction form. In imported fields, we have defined previously name, colors, and type of field, which is a text field. We can also see that the author of a template has enabled model suggestion. And here we have those units. And in every moment, we can change the order of other fields. So now let's add new text field manually by button add field. Now we can name it. And also customize and add a text field. We can also tick require field and enable model suggestion for this part. Okay, the next option are vocabularies. Vocabularies are useful when we have the same pattern of fields in many projects. And vocabs can be created within a single organization and are useful especially for the extractors to code the data. As a result, extraction process is faster, easier, and we avoid synonyms and typos. So let's create our vocab. Okay, so on the left, there is a field type. In the middle, we can create our own vocab or import it from the Excel file. So we want to cover 2 issues. For example, eczema type and severity of eczema. So let's add the first term, eczema type, and severity. So both 2 topics are on the same level, so we call them siblings. For each of sibling, we can add also a child, which means that we can add things with lower level. So let's add a child to eczema type. neurodermatitis, and the next one would be atopic dermatitis, and the last one, contact dermatitis. Okay, so we added these three options, and they are both siblings, whereas they are also children of eczema type, and eczema type is a parent of these three terms. So now let's add children to severity of eczema. Okay, so now our basic vocab is ready. In every moment, we can change levels of terms and their sequence, for example, by promoting or demoting. Here we have a demoting and also promoting. We can also change levels. And another option of creating a vocabulary is to import the whole vocab from Excel file. So let's create another vocabulary. Okay, here is an option to import our vocabs. And here we have our example Excel file. Here are three levels of outcomes for psoriasis, and it's quite difficult to recognize the three levels, but when we add this Excel to the Dextr, it would be easier. Upload. Okay, and now we have a fully implemented vocab, which can be modified in every moment, of course. So now let's go back to our template. So now we can add new fields using vocabularies from the previously created vocab called systematic treatment. So we add new attribute, systematic treatment, and we choose all of the created previously levels, and we have to also name them. Like first level, the lowest level would be intervention name. The second one, intervention type. And the third one, intervention category. Okay, let's apply. And here we can see that the whole vocab have been applied here in the preview. So the last step is to create connections between all of these fields. So this function links together fields from certain domains. For example, here we have an intervention domain. So we create connection between those value and those unit, and also between those value and intervention name. So let's click connections and those unit and intervention name. And our template is ready. At the end, remember to save changes. So now I will give the floor to Eva, and she will tell us how to create and set up the project.
Now I will show you how to create and set up new project. We click Create Project. We want to extract the data for systemic treatments for atopic dermatitis. First, we need to add our team members and define their role. At this stage, we may add our references, however, it's optional. Our final stage is to create our data extraction template, However, we don't want to start from scratch, and Dextr allows us to reuse data extraction templates across multiple projects. So let's assume that a data extraction template for a very similar research question is already available. In this review, we extracted data for the same set of systemic treatment, but the condition was different. So I click Modify. First, we need to decide which fields from our previous project match our current PICO acronym and which require some modification. Here, we need to pay special attention to the vocabulary fields. Probably most of them need to be replaced. So let's start with a condition section. And condition is text field, so it remains unchanged. The severity of disease, on the other hand, is vocabulary field. In this case, we have the same classification of the severity for atopic dermatitis and for psoriasis, so we don't need to replace existing vocabulary. Now let's move to the intervention. In this section, you have perfect match with our previous project. So there's no need to replace existing vocabulary. And for this field, we enable model suggestion. This time, we will extract route of administration. So I click Import Fields. I select my standard project for pharmacological intervention. I select field and import. Because route of administration belongs to the intervention, so I change order and make connection with intervention. In outcome section, we also decided to enable model suggestion. This field will be coded by our extractors. And in this case, we need to remove existing vocabulary. So I click Remove and add new vocabulary field. I create attribute name. And save. This time, our reviewers will be extract study type. So I create additional field. I define attribute name and select background color. And because in this project, a study type should be extracted by our review team as a code value, so I create vocabulary field. I select terms and create attribute name. And that's it. Our data extraction form is ready, and our review team may begin their extraction. I will now present Dextr from the extractor perspective. I will show you how to verify entities that were extracted by our model, how to extract data that are not supported by our model, and finally, how to code our extracted values. To begin our data extraction, we need to click on our project. On the right, we see list of our references. Not all of them are already uploaded, so I need to add them manually. To begin our data extraction, we need to select our study, and on the right, we see our data extraction forms. Some of the entities like intervention name, dose value, dose unit, route of administration, and outcomes have been already extracted by our model, and we need to verify their correctness. So let's start with condition domain. Condition name is a field name. To extract the data, I need to select a phrase from our PDF and add it. The severity of disease is vocabulary field. In our study, we have two subgroups of patients with severe atopic dermatitis and with moderate atopic dermatitis. I need to add additional field. The last thing to do in this condition domain is to make a connection between the severity of disease at condition and condition name. So I click condition and connect. Okay, so now let's move to the intervention section. Our model already extracts some data like intervention name, dose value, and dose unit, and we need to verify those suggestions. I click on the field name. Extracted entity is highlighted in PDF, so we see the whole context. And for the first two suggestions, this information was just mentioned in discussion section, so I removed those two objects. The next two are correct suggestions. I click accept. I need to verify those value and those unit and accept. And the next one, I verify those value and those unit and accept. We need to code intervention name, intervention type, and intervention category. So I click select and code. As you may see, there's no need to code intervention type and intervention category. Those two fields are automatically coded by Dextr. We may start our coding from the top level of our vocabulary. And now the list of suggested terms is restricted to those categories. The last entity in this intervention section is route of administration. Those field was also extracted by our model. So I click on the field name and verify suggestion. Now I need to make a connection between route of administration and intervention. So I click connection module and select intervention name. And connect. Let's jump to the outcome section. Here our model also extracts some values and we need to verify them. So first, adverse events are correct suggestion. However, in this project we decided to do not extract safety outcomes, so I remove object. And next one is correct suggestion. So I accept entity and code it. To save our current progress, we need to click on the Save button, and when our data extraction is complete, we need to click on Send button, and our second reviewer is ready for their verification.
Now we are in the quality assurance panel, which is the last element of the extraction process. This panel is designed to verify data extracted by the extractor. To start the verification process, we have to choose the article from the panel on the left side. And now we can see the extraction finished by the first extractor. All yellow fields are elements of extraction which need to be checked. To verify data, let's click the field name, and we can see the underlined part of a text in the article. Next, click accept or reject if, for example, we can't agree with the extractor. And the next concept to verify is disease severity. As we can see here, the extractor extracted only severe disease status, and he missed the moderate disease severity. So as a reviewer, I can add it to the extraction form. Let's accept the severe disease severity and add moderate. And next, we can go to the intervention section. We have to verify in the text intervention name, step intervention code. And also we have to check if the dosage is correct. And now we have to repeat the whole process for the second arm. Let's check the dosage. Okay, the next step is to verify the route of administration, and that's the last part of the intervention domain. Here is an oral route. And here is subcutaneous. And the last element is to check if outcomes are entered correctly. So the first outcome is correct. So let's accept it. And find the second one in text. Okay. Okay, so the verification and the whole data extraction process in Dextr is finished. To save current progress, click Save. And to finish verification, click Send. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We have received some feedback that there was a little bit of technical difficulties. We apologize for this, and we promise that the video recording will be of a better quality. So you will receive the presentation in the better state. And if you have any questions, I invite you to type them in question and answer section. Section, and we also received some questions in the chat. First question is, can you add terms to the list of possible values when setting up a project if something is missing from the vocabulary? Is there somebody who would like to answer this question?
So I can take this one if you wouldn't like.
Artur,
so
we cannot see you.
Oh, you cannot see me. That's strange. But you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I will fix the camera in the meantime. I will just answer the question. Yeah, you can add additional terms when setting up a project. So if something is missing from the vocabulary, this is something that you can add yourself. This is especially useful because we plan that the vocabularies will be managed by users with very specific roles. So there will be some sort of a special group at every organization that maintains these vocabularies. But still, the project managers can add their own terms. These terms are then, let's say, fed back to the control vocabulary module. So people that manage control vocabularies can see that there are some values that are being added by the project managers.
Claudia, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this answer. I have another question in the chat. How the data is exported from the tool? Do you have integration with statistical tools?
So the data currently is being exported as a CSV or JSON file. So the CSV file is, of course, very, I would say, flexible. With some degree of data transformation, you can put it into any sort of a statistical tool. We are working on, I would say, tighter integration with statistical tools. So if you have a tool that you especially like, please let us know at hello@Laser.ai, and we'll look at whether we can create some sort of a customized export format for this.
Thank you, Artur. And we have one more question in the question and answer session. To what extent may this technology be applicable to sectors beyond health, which rely heavily on quasi-experimental designs?
So the tool, especially the data extraction tool, is very flexible. And as you could see from the data extraction setup phase, we are starting with a clean slate, and you can define any number of objects, any number of attributes, connect them together. If you can design a data extraction form, even if it's more for, let's say, more qualitative studies, you can still do this. Even in health, of course, very often we have some tools that are not quasi-experimental, and we can still design forms to facilitate such data.
Thank you so much. So I think we are running out of time, and thank you all for a great presentation. Thank you, Artur, for answering the question. Congratulations for the FedRAMP authorization. And I have one more news. So basically, last week, another tool produced by Evidence Prime have just reached 100,000 users. And we would like to celebrate this event. We are very, very happy and proud to have trust of so many people and to share your scientific, and we would like to say thank you for sharing your scientific journey with us. And to celebrate this, we organized a little giveaway on Twitter. And I think in the chat, you can find the links to the Twitter. What you have to do to take part in the giveaway is to like and retweet our tweet, follow GRADEpro account and Evidence Prime, and optionally for extra rewards, you can comment your experience connected to working with GRADEpro. So in giveaway, you can win different GRADEpro related gifts from our team. And the main prize, it's one of the vouchers of 3 vouchers for InGuide course level 1 to receive guideline panel member certification course. And the winners will be announced 14th of July, one day after GRADE working group meeting in Krakow. So if you take part, we invite you to take part and stay tuned for the results. So thank you everyone for your attention. And these are our social media. You can find us and follow. And if you have any questions, please contact us at either webinars@evidenceprime.com or laser@evidenceprime.com. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.